before we get started, if you all can make sure you stay muted. If you're not muted, mute yourself. Should see a little red speaker or megaphone down or microphone in the left corner with a line through it. Make sure you're named your name. If you're not named your name, make sure you're using your AD or principal's name. There will be a question for you that'll pop up towards the end or at some point during this meeting. That is basically an attendance check. If you fail to answer that when it pops up, we won't know that you were here. We don't have somebody sitting going through making sure everybody was here. It will answer based on the name that is on your screen. So if I see Derek Youngblood's there, but I know that's not Derek Youngblood from Barwell. I know that's who that is, but that is their AD. So we would give that school credit. If you've got somebody else's name beside head football coach or AD or principal, it won't give you credit when you answer it. It'll be credit as that person, but we'll have a hard time knowing that you were actually physically the one there. So change your name, and then we will be able to give you that credit. If you got any questions, you can ask them in the chat down here. Certainly, if you want to just email me later, you certainly can. I'm going to try to go through it. I'm going to present you the same thing I presented to the group that was there yesterday in Greenville. Most of it's pretty straightforward. If you only have one rule change in football this year that impacts the game, how it's being played itself, most of the information we'll spend our time on will be, pertaining to league matters and issues that we see or things that we need to address. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started and share my screen with you. We'll get rolling. Of course, I am Charlie Winsky. That's how to contact me. Best way is through email. Coaching requirements, nothing's changed. Apologize, nothing's changed here. You still have the 4 courses that are required, concussion, protecting students from abuse, heat acclimatization, sudden cardiac arrest. Those are required. That is every coach you have on your staff, whether they are a volunteer or the head coach or the assistant JV coach, or they just come coach on Friday nights. They are all required to do that and take the CPR and AED certification, which the CPR AED lasts 2 years. We are recommending that everybody go back through the COVID-19 course. Of course, you don't have to, but I think the numbers are looking at 19% right now across the state. So it might be a good idea just to refresh your coaches' memories on some COVID protocols and some things to do, even though we have been through it. It's always a good reminder as we head into the year. And then a new course the Federation has just launched. It's called the Collapsed Athlete. It's essentially a combination of a heat illness / sudden cardiac arrest. When it happens, what do you do next? It's about 20-something minutes. You can all watch that together. You can choose not to, but we are recommending everybody go through it. Medical info, nothing's changed in terms of the 5 approved healthcare professionals for return to play. Most everybody will have one of these somewhere at one of their contests. There'll be very rare occasions where the 2 schools playing each other don't have anyone there. In that case, if that is in your situation, you certainly players sent off the field for concussion-like symptoms and you don't have one of these 5 on the left who can return to play immediately, that player will be out the remainder of the contest. If you don't have an AT or a doctor on your sideline and you don't before the game, check with your opponent prior to the game and ask them if they've got one. I've yet to meet an athletic trainer or a doctor who won't go help someone in need medically or in need of a safety check. So they'll be happy to come over and help you, I'm sure. Other medical info, the wet bulb globe thermometer. This is nothing new, but we didn't experience it very much last year, given the fact we started in September. Of course, tomorrow is going to be a whole different animal than last September was. So make sure you're aware and remind yourselves of the protocols for the wet bulb globe. Don't get into an argument or to an issue with that person who is taking that wet bulb globe reading. It is what it is. At the end of the day, it's about the internal safety, the internal heat safety of your players and your coaches as well. Physicals, April 1 of 2021 or later to be valid. Make sure you've got an emergency action plan or you talk to your AD that you do have one. And as I told the group yesterday, this is not so much for your practice field and your game facility as much as it's understand what your emergency action plan is in your buildings. Many of you When you get together and watch film, you spread out through buildings. You go down to hallways. Coaches go back to classrooms with student athletes. Do those students know where the closest AED is to that classroom? Do they know where the closest AED is to the room that they're in right now? In a lot of cases, your kids may not be the smartest kids at times, but most of them can listen and follow basic directions, especially when it matters the most in saving someone's life. Taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes to show your position group or your kids where the AEDs are in your school, and that 5 or 10 minutes could be the difference in saving somebody's life, potentially yours. So get them familiar with what they can do to help in the action of emergency. Immersion tubs, remember, you have to have those at practices and at all times. And if you don't have immersion tubs, other similar cooling devices are required. Sportsmanship, that top line is kind of the whole deal. What you permit, you promote. What you turn a blind eye, you turn a deaf ear, you might as well just give them the license to do it again. And, I think sometimes we just think, I heard that, but I'm not going to deal with that right now. Kids know you hear it. The kid that's walking not far from you, they know you hear it. The kid that's 20 feet behind you, they know you hear it. Maybe not the one that said it, but they know that coaches hear it. They know that coaches see it. And if you don't address it, then they take that as a license that it's okay to do it again. So we have to be straightforward in what our expectations are. Coaches, just plain and simple. You've got to take ownership of the behavior of your coaches and your players. It all comes down to you. You are the head coach. You are the one in charge. Their behavior and their performance, it all reflects back to you. So you have to take ownership of that and set the expectations for what you will and won't tolerate. And that all begins with what you permit, you promote. Unsporting remarks towards opponents, they've got to be discouraged. We can't be encouraging students to make unsporting remarks towards our opponents. Certainly spectators. And I know in a football game on a Friday night or Thursday night, you probably don't care or hear what spectators are saying, but we do have a ton of issues that are popping up with our student sections that are not just cheering for their team anymore. It's become a battle of who can outdo who, and they're trying to intimidate or to really just badger and harass, and in a lot of cases bully opponents. And what they do, they're very creative, they're very smart. They get on the internet, they find social media accounts, they find out who Charlie's girlfriend is, they find out where he lives, they find out who his mom is, what she does, and they just start badgering these kids with personal information. That has no business in high school athletics. And I'm telling you guys this, you may not be able to address it on Friday nights, but when you're in those gyms in basketball, or you're on the sidelines in soccer or lacrosse or any other sport that you go to as a school person, take issue with this. I told the group yesterday, football is a powerful thing in every school, which means you have a powerful position. A lot of people will listen to you, and you can be the leader of your school and set that culture along with your principal and athletic director. So take the initiative and the ownership and the expectations you've got for sportsmanship and pass it down through your whole school. Degrading remarks about officials, opponents, or the SCHSL is considered unsportsmanlike conduct and will be addressed as such. We've got a lot of people, especially a lot of young coaches, who think that taking to social media and attaching SCHSL and being critical of this organization is appropriate. That's not no different than somebody from this staff or another coach in our association attacking you as a coach or attacking your program in a negative way. That's unsporting behavior. We would address that. We're going to address it if it's addressed towards the league itself. In many cases, these folks, they're making their opinions of the league without knowing the full information behind the decision. In many cases, they're making, degrading remarks about people in this office. Personally, I can handle things like that, but we have to address those things as unsportsmanlike conduct, especially when we get into our officials, opponents in the league. So make sure you make all your coaches and players aware that this needs to be mindful. Not telling them don't have an opinion of us. Not telling them don't have an opinion about officiating. Just telling them don't make it public where everybody can see it. They want to state it publicly to somebody in your office. Well, I'm not addressing that. When they make it to where I can see it, we're going to have to address it. Ejections, nothing's changed here. Of course, it's a minimum one game in football. Remember, they are ineligible immediately. They can remain in the bench area. Don't ever let an official tell you, especially on a young kid on Thursday or Wednesday night, they've got to leave the facility. That becomes a supervision and a liability issue. And we're not getting into that. So you just know the difference of that. Coaches, if you get ejected, unfortunately, you do have to go. You need to be able to supervise yourself at that point in time, no matter how upset you are. Remember, it's a minimum 2-game suspension for coaches that get ejected and a $300 fine. So when you get that first unsporting flag, be mindful that when the second one comes, what it's going to carry, whether you meant to get the second one or not. When you got the first one, you know the second one is going to have a whole bigger weight to it than just 15 yards. And keep this in mind too as you work on Thursday nights with JV level, because potentially, you've got to serve that at the level it occurs. So not only as a head coach, but if you've got varsity assistants that coach on the sub-varsity level and they get ejected, they're going to miss some varsity time. They're going to potentially miss up to 4 games, depending on how your schedule is shaked out. So I get ejected, and just think about this. I get ejected on Thursday night. I'm not coaching Friday. Okay. I'm not coaching the next Thursday. That's my first one I'm sitting. I'm not coaching the next Friday. And I'm not coaching the next Thursday. So there's going to be a 4 games. It's served at the level it occurs. So be mindful of that and know that Thursday nights and Wednesday nights can carry a whole bigger weight to it than just getting ejected on a Friday night. All right, officiating, as I'll told the group yesterday, as the kids say, I'll just give you some real talk. We're in a really, really, really critical state right now. Our officials, we're not getting a ton of new ones. We're not getting a bunch of new ones. We're not getting a few new ones. We're getting a very small amount of new ones. As you well know, I don't know anybody on this call or anybody I met with yesterday that says, hey, I'll take a guy that's never officiated before in my first game this year. We can't do that. So if I've got 25 new officials, I don't have anywhere for them to work yet until we start playing sub-varsity games. I think right now we're about 650 officials registered, probably closer to 625 that are certified. 7 years ago when I got here, it was closer to 750 that were registered and over 700 that were certified. And you say, well, 75 is not that bad. 75 is huge, especially if 40 of them are referees and back judges. It becomes huge. Oftentimes, sub-varsity level, that's where they're getting their experience. So we need your help, in getting officials. I mean, we are at the point where, unfortunately, many of your schools may get calls this year and say, hey, we don't have officials for you next Friday. We're going to have to move that game to Thursday or Saturday if you plan on playing. And I hate to be in that point, and I hope that doesn't come to be the case. But as I look at the numbers across the state, that's a real possibility. I went and met Tuesday night with the local chapter of officials who typically have around 30 or 35 officials in their chapter, and they've been having about 17 to 20 come to meetings this year. Some of our bigger chapters that typically have around 80 to 100, 2 of those are in the 60s right now. They've had 90, that's 30 officials. That's 6 games, folks. That's 6 games of officials gone. And that impacts us all the way down. So be mindful of that. As I told the group yesterday, we'll do exactly what we did last year with COVID. We're not going to isolate it to just 1A or 5A or 3A or one area. We're going to spread the wealth. We'll kind of just bounce around the classifications in that area until we cycle through every school. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But, I need your help, and I've told our officials I need their help. We've got 650 officials. We've got 200 head football coaches. Between those 2 groups, we've got 850 persons. If everybody in that group goes and gets one person to sign up to be a football official next year, we'll have 850 new applicants. We got a population of 5.5, 6 million people in this state, and we can only find 650 that want to be an official. I got to think there's 650 more out there. If half of that 850 sticks, or just 400 sticks, we're over 1,000. If we can do that for 2 or 3 years in a row, we'll be in a situation where we're going to be okay for a long time. And those of you that are on the end of your careers, help us keep this thing going, because it could come to a point where we just won't have enough to even have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday games if it keeps going this direction. With that, when we get them in, we've got to treat them the right way. We can't run them off before we get them started. And Thursday nights and Wednesday nights, that's where they're learning. That's where they're getting their experience. That's where they're getting their opportunities. Just like all your young coaches, just like all your young players. You and I both know if you've got a kid that knows your offense and knows where to be and knows their play calls, knows what their assignments are and can execute it and are really good, they're probably not playing on Thursday nights. They're probably helping you out on Friday. And it's the same thing for our officials. If our young officials, who I consider to be first, second, and third year, if they know where they need to be and what to do and what the rules are and how to officiate it, we're going to use them on Friday nights. We're not just isolating the Thursdays. You do get a lot of veteran officials on Thursdays because the numbers need it. But remember, that's where they're being abused at the most. And we've got to treat them the right way. It's a professional courtesy, it's professional respect. They understand it goes both ways. We teach them that. We tell them that. We remind them, if you want to be treated with respect, show respect. If you don't show the coaches respect, don't expect to get respect back. So if you want it, give it. And I always tell them, just nice, yes, sir, yes, coach, be as nice as they can be. And it should help with the relationship on the sidelinings. But we've got to treat them the right way, but we've got to get them to the plate first. We got to get them to the plate before we try to strike them out for sure. Remember, they're assigned to do the job of the best of their abilities. Just like some of your players, your best players, sometimes that day, they didn't meet what their standards were. Your players don't meet what your standards are. Sometimes our officials don't meet what their standards are for themselves or the standards we have for them. We've got great officials that have made bad calls. We've got really bad officials that have made really great calls. Sometimes they find a needle in the haystack as well too. So, they're there to do their job. If you have an issue with game officials, the best way to handle it, the way to handle it from a varsity football standpoint is you need to send your issues and reports and clips to me, ASAP. You got a Friday night game, don't send them next Thursday. Hey, I want to talk to you about these plays from last Friday. You've moved on. We've all moved on. That's a little bit late. It's hard for me to get those out. Not that I want to address them, but if it's an issue, I need to see it as fast as I can. Now, that doesn't mean pick up the phone and call me, Friday night, 11:30 and say, I'm going to send you these clips, get back to me. I need them Monday. I need them Monday morning when I come in so I can start working on them. Again, I don't need 65 clips that have, 63 judgment calls in it. I don't mind looking at a few that have judgment calls in it, but, I need the ones where we are not applying the rules correctly. We're not applying the penalties correctly. We're calling incorrect penalties, or we just have a total misapplication of something in the rule book. Those are things that I need. And I use those clips for teaching purposes. And many times the best way to get me information is just send me your huddle login information and make me a play sheet for the clips. That is the absolute easiest way to do it. I promise you, I am not sharing your information and your clips with other schools. I promise you, if they want your video, they've got it, or they will get it. You know that. I know that. It is not coming from here. That's the best way to get it to me. What we don't need, what doesn't help the situation, is when coaches get on the internet and they post and clip on social media plays from Friday night that were called incorrectly, especially when we're blowing up. We're magnifying that picture of the still shot of the foot being inbounds or out of bounds with a 2 inches. Come on, the official doesn't get that opportunity. Officiating judgment calls are all about angles and eyes. The angle they have and the eyes they have. That's what officiating comes down to for them. Your angle where you are on the sideline is different from their angle. Just what it is. You see it different than they see it from their angle. Their eyes see it different than your eyes see it. And that's what it comes down to in judgment, unfortunately. And they're hired to do the best they can with the best judgment they got. Cutting and posting clips and putting them on social media for the whole world to chime in on how bad our officiating is. It's not helping. It's not making that call change. It's not helping us get more people to officiate. There's people out there wondering if they want to do it, and they see stuff like that and they say, I don't want to be put under that microscope. I mean, we've seen officials at the highest levels of football make very bad calls. We've seen replay with the ability to slow it down, make incorrect calls. So we're asking officials to see it one time, one shot. So talk to your coaches. Blowing up the huddle video from Saturday morning or Friday night and putting it on social media and talk about how bad the officials were. That's not what we need. There is a way to handle it. There's a way to address this. And you just need to come right through me. If you've got something from Thursday night, and a lot of times you will have issues from Thursday night or sub-varsity games, send it to your local assigner, but also send it to me, because a lot of times most of your issues will come with a misapplication of rules. And that's partly because we've got somebody who is training at White Hat who needs that experience. And we use that. And a lot of times I've been able to get that out on Friday mornings to folks to make sure we don't screw that up on Friday nights. So I do use all this stuff I get as much as I can. Remember, and I don't want to keep too long on this, but angles are huge. I had a couple years back, I had a coach send me an end zone camera. He sent me his huddle. He said, go in the end zone, go to play this, and look at this play. The line judge on our sideline, he calls a hold on our receiver, and you look at this end zone angle, there's no hold. There's simply you can see space in between the two of them. So I look at it. I said, I see the same thing you're seeing. I got it. And I said, curiosity got the best of me. So while I was in his account, I switched views and I looked at the wide view, which was from his sideline above the press box, which is the same angle the official had. And from that angle, it looks like there's a hold with the left hand. I just told him, I said, Coach, from the angle you sent me, I don't see a hold. Unfortunately, the guy that called the hold has the other angle. Go back and look at your wide clip and you'd see what he saw. And it looks like there might have been a hold. And that's what he got you for. So just be mindful of the angles and the eyes. Social media teams. All I can tell you here is they have a very good benefit to your athletes. They can have a great benefit to your programs, a great thing for your community. And a lot of times it can be great for that individual who's developing this. It can spur them into a new career path. Be mindful that these folks don't always have oversight. There are folks roaming around out there that are independent, that they kind of work their way down and talk their way to sidelines. And next thing you know, they're in your locker room and they're filming your team, or they're in your huddles and they're filming you. And everything that's said is being posted tomorrow morning or within hours. And they appear to be there for what you think are the right reasons or somebody thought was the right reasons. A lot of times they get there and they're in your locker room, game's over. You put a camera in your kid's face. You know what kids do when they get a camera? They become kids. They say what they want to say. They don't think twice about where it's going to get to. And you get home and the next morning it's on social media and your next opponent has got food for them for that week because your kids have been talking about how much they want to beat this school and how bad they're going to beat them. And you had no clue who posted it and no clue how they got in your locker room and no clue where they are. This is real. We've had several situations with this in the last year. So be mindful of these folks that are running these social media or media people that you are allowing into your locker room, because if you give them all access, they've got all access, which means every word you say is getting out there potentially. So be mindful. They're going to get caught up in trying to get the best video. They're going to try to get the best picture. They don't care who they interfere with. These are not, in a lot of cases, these are not people that have gone to journalism school to learn the etiquette of journalism and where to be and how to be. They ignore that. So keep those in mind and keep those in the right place and use them for the right reasons. Let me think one thing with that too. If you've got a school media account or you got an account that has your mascot in it or your football program's name on it, it doesn't matter who's running it. We're going to address it as it being a school account. So if you've got a student that's running an account for you, make sure they understand what is okay and what's not to put out there. Because if it's got your name attached to it or your school's name or your program's name, we're going to address it as such. We're not going to come back and say, oh, that's just a 16-year-old kid that's doing this. You need to make sure they understand. You're not official. Make sure you understand you're not official. Change your name. New this year, varsity teams allowed 2 scrimmages and 1 jamboree. Sub-varsities allowed 1 and 1. Remember, by league definition, a jamboree is a game-like scrimmage where no team plays more than a half of a regular contest. If you play week 0, you wouldn't get more than 2 and 1 in, based on the 3 days in between. So that shouldn't be any major changes for you as a coach. The open season, you've got, of course, spring practice May 1 through 31. Remember, 20 days. Nothing's really changed there for you all. y'all been kind of, other than in the COVID year, you've not had any hiccups with that. Of course, closed season violations, remember, these are your penalties. These are in the rule book. Every time we get somebody that has a violation, they always say, man, those penalties are pretty tough. Could you give me some leniency? Well, if you get 3 days in violation, you don't go to the playoffs. The rule clearly states that. Make sure you're familiar with what these say. They're right there in the rules and regulations. Of course, each day of the violation, or each time you have the violation of the closed season, it's a $500 fine, and then you have your step progression for penalties for that. And you should have an attendance poll coming through now. Make sure you answer that. I'll give you a quick second. Not sure if there's another one coming on or not. We do have someone monitoring the numbers jumping off, so don't take this as your license to leave. All right, a sponsor we've had join recently is teamfunder.com. It was sent to me on Sunday, and I was asked to put this into our presentation. I don't truthfully know a whole heck of a lot about it, but they have joined as a league partner, and part of their expectations is that we present a slide to you all and on all of our coaches meetings. They claim to be a better way to fundraise, and there's, you can read down there the benefits. No more door-to-door, no in-person events needed, minimum orders, cost startup fees. So if you're interested in using them, we'll get some more information out, but it's teamfunder.com. Check them out. Okay, we've talked about it a little bit, not having enough officials. We're going to ask some of you possibly to move games to Thursday or Saturday. What I would share, if you have a game or two that you know that you could go ahead and move to Thursday on the front end, it would help. Some people asked yesterday, will it alleviate me getting a call later down the road? I can't promise that, because, if I'm 65 officials short in an area, I may have to move more than 3 or 4 games. I may be having to move 7 or 8 games. And you may be told it's going to be Thursday. And then you're going to be on Saturday. We had some schools last year that we had to do this with due to COVID, but we had to do this with due to a shortage of officials and COVID as well. And I'll just share with you too, kind of our process is we auto assign officials. It fills in all the 5 slots on all the games across the state. 3 or 4 years ago, once we auto assigned, we'd have probably 7 or 8 holes we need to fill slots of officials across the state. Usually we had 30 to 40 officials to pull from. Last year, we had times where we had 19 games where we didn't have a referee or a back judge or an umpire at the game. In many cases, I think in 16 of those 19 games one week, we only had 1 official assigned. That's tough. That's tough, especially when I need 19 referees and they're all below Columbia, and I don't have any referees. My closest ones I got are in 2 in Oconee County. Now I got to move people around. So we got it all done, but we have had to ask some to move in the past, and it can be a blessing or a curse. But the difference is you either play on a Thursday or Saturday, or you potentially don't play that week. So it's real, and we need your help. Okay, a couple things here. Post-play acts. We have to eliminate post-play actions that draw attention to our players. The second bullet there, that is an example. That's an example of a post-play act that is drawing attention to players. Football rules for the NFHS, any act that is drawing attention to an individual is considered an unsporting foul. They should be flagged for this. I didn't notice this being a ton of issues last year in our state, but I did see it enough to say this is probably going to start becoming more of an issue. A kid getting up after a first down run and making everybody aware that he passed the chains, that is an act that is drawing attention to himself. That is an unsporting act. I know they may see it on Saturdays. I know they may see it on Sundays, but that is an unsporting act by our rules. I don't know why they're allowing them to do this on Saturday. They're allowing them to do a lot of things on Saturdays on TV that are unsporting acts at their level. But unfortunately, our kids see it and they want to model that on Friday nights and Thursday nights. And what they don't understand is it's by rule, it's unsporting like conduct. And what happens is Charlie gets a 7-yard run for a first down late in the first quarter of a tie ball game, and he gets up and he first downs it right in front of some kid. That kid takes his arm and swats it down. Charlie pushes him back. Now you and your staff and your administration are dealing with us on Monday morning because you've got 7 or 8 players involved in a skirmish or a scuffle. I've yet to see a fight that we've had break out. I think maybe a couple where there wasn't an action that caused the reaction. Sometimes it's verbal. A lot of times it's physical. A lot of times the physical is not seen. But these unsporting acts, and I'm just giving you an example there of signaling the first down. I'm not saying we're targeting that only. It's any act that draws attention to themselves. Getting up and doing this or pointing at another kid, those are unsporting acts, and those things are going to be addressed. And I'm going to instruct our officials, we've got to hammer this down. We can't let this get out of control. We let this go, we're going to start seeing more and more unsporting acts in this game, and we're going to start seeing more and more issues with fights and altercations, and that's not what anybody wants. So talk to your kids, make sure they understand. We're not telling them don't go have fun. We're not telling them not to be excited. We're not telling them don't celebrate with their teammates. We're just telling them don't draw attention to yourself. Don't do these acts that would be defined as unsporting conduct. Okay, rules info. We've had, I would just say in my 7 years, we get, I don't know, I probably get 8 to 10 calls a year, making sure I'm right on these pad progressions the first 5 days. I know what I'm doing. What can I wear? What can't I wear? We probably had, I don't know, 7 or 8 violations of this. And in most cases, some people say, yep, we understood it. We don't know why we did it. We did it. In some cases, people say, oh, well, this is everywhere I've worked for 10 years, we've done this, or everywhere I've been, or everybody I talk to says you can do this. Interpretation's always been what I'm putting here in front of you, but now it says it exactly as what the interpretation's always been. So everybody's clear. Days 1 and 2 are helmets only. Certainly that means they can wear a t-shirt and shorts, but in terms of football equipment, it's helmets only. Days 3 and 4, helmets and shoulder pads. No other pads can be worn. That includes pads on, at, or below the waist. This includes pads in a girdle. And girdles worn under shorts. Helmets and shoulder pads only for days 3 and 4. Now, what you need to be mindful of and tell your assistant coaches to be mindful of is, Charlie, who went to Dick's and bought himself a girdle for the year that came with pads in it, and he wears them out there under his shorts. You need to make sure they understand they can't wear those for those 2 days. After those 2 days, they can wear them every day the rest of the year, after those 4 days, really. So make sure they understand that it's helmets and shoulder pads, no other pads. Pads below the waist or on the waist, that is considered a violation and has been treated as such and will be treated as such. And then, of course, day 5 is full gear or any combination of full gear that you choose as a head coach. Day 6 would be your scrimmage day as it's laid out in the calendar. And a reminder that all players must go through the 5-day pad progression regardless of where the rest of the team is in the progression. Okay, so if you start practice tomorrow and Charlie comes out there on Monday, while the rest of your team may be in helmets and shoulder pads, Charlie should be in helmets only. And he would go through all that. That may delay him getting out there to scrimmage, but it's part of the pad progression. Again, this is as much a league violation as a liability for you to make sure they acclimatize to the heat and humidity that's out there. Your state finals, December 2nd through 4th. Just as your information to come would be Thursday is going to be 4A. Friday will be 2 o'clock and 7 is 2A and 3A. And then we've got 1A and 5 going on Saturday. This, of course, was set by the executive committee. I know some of you are saying, boy, Thursday, that's tough for a state final. If you're fortunate enough to make it 5 years in a row, you will play in all 5 time slots across all 3 days. It's going to be a snake, so it's not going to be just 4A's always set on Thursday at 7. But right now, if you're a 4A head football coach, you know if you make the state finals that you're playing on Thursday night. You and your opponent will have a little bit shorter week that week. This does allow us a couple things. For those of you that have been to a state final in the past, you know it's a lot of hurry up and moving and changing locations and places and getting stuff in and out of locker rooms and making sure you've done this. It doesn't simulate what you do all year long. This allows us to be able to have a standalone game you walk the field, you take your time, you play, you leave. We don't have to hurry up and rush you off the field because, hey, the other two teams are in the end zone warming up. This kind of allows for a little bit more normal atmosphere for the game. And with 5 classifications to do that, we had to stretch it across a 3-day period. So that's the schedule, better for worse. If you get there, you don't like your time slot, just always remember you got a chance to win a championship. So take it as it comes and enjoy the moment. NFHS rule change. The real simple explanation for you is that blocking below the waist in the free blocking zone still is available to you. However, it must be immediate. It must be the immediate initial action of either player, either the offensive or defensive player. What this means for you is that the pulling guard that's going to cut the tackle coming in to the hole is not going to be allowed because that pulling guard's immediate action is going to be a step backwards. The defensive end who cuts that fullback trying to blow up the wing T is not going to be allowed because his initial action, he's going to take multiple steps to get to that fullback. It's got to be that initial fire off first move is going to block below the waist. That tackle who is going to take a step back and allow that end to come up before he cuts him so you can throw that slant pass, that's going to be a legal block below the waist because his initial action was a step back. Okay. I won't give you my opinion of the rule. I was on the committee. I won't give you what my opinion was. I'm just going to teach it to you, but I'm going to tell you there are some issues with it. Some of you right now are thinking, oh boy, this is going to be something. So it's got to be an immediate initial action. Everything else is the same. They got to be on the line of scrimmage and in the zone at the time of the snap. The ball's got to be in the zone. But essentially, if they don't do it immediately, I mean, the ball would already be out of the zone anyway. If you see here, if you look at number 65, who's the right guard, he could block 93. He could also come down and block 52. There's nothing that says they have to be head up, the person they're going to block. They can get to the guy, probably to one player to the right of them or either side of them, and still make that their initial action. Anybody outside of one player, I got a hard time believing that can be their initial immediate action. I'm going to show you a couple play clips here. If your school is one of them, I apologize. Don't take this. You didn't necessarily do anything wrong. I want you to watch up here on the top right side, and I'll back it up for you. This would be a penalty this year. And he scores a touchdown on this play. Watch this right guard. Watch both of his feet. Both of his feet come back first, and then he goes down. His immediate initial action, his feet are coming back. And you're going to say, well, that's tough. It is going to be tough, and I'll tell you why in a second. Let me get to the next clip. Next clip, I want you to watch the right side again up here. We're going to get a shift by the defense. And then we're going to get an immediate block down. This would be legal by rule. See, he initially fires out. It's that right tackle. He's initially going to fire out and block below the waist. This would be legal. Now, the problem with this is I've been able to kind of zero you in on two players to watch specifically on this film. You and I both know that an official, a referee, or an umpire, they don't have the ability to zero in on an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman to tell whether his initial immediate action is exactly where it should be. So those little bitty false steps, those little bitty half steps, like in that first clip, there's probably a high chance that won't get seen every single time. I'm telling you this so you can be mindful of this when you watch film on late Friday nights, early Saturday mornings and say, oh, they missed that one. Look at his feet. If they zero in on one player, they potentially miss another player. My opinion, the problem with this rule is that if they don't see it right away, they don't see it exactly as it happens, it makes it very hard to get it exactly right. I think they're going to get it exactly right a lot more than they miss. But you saw like that first play, that guard, those two feet coming back. If they don't catch those 2 feet, just see him go straight down, it's going to give the appearance that it was immediate initial, and they're probably going to let it roll. And also, too, you got to remember that officials are taught, if they don't clearly see it, they're not supposed to call it. They can't call it based on what they think. Another thing I get a lot of film from coaches on is, hey, this is a block below the waist. And it's an attempted block below the waist. The kid whiffs. The kid goes down. The other kid steps over. The kid steps around. An attempted block below the waist is not a penalty. An attempted penalty is not a penalty. If I attempt to target you and I don't land the hit, it's not a target. Editorial changes, I won't bog you down in that. Rule reminders, remember you have the opportunity to designate a representative, whether it be a player or yourself, in terms of the administration of penalties. If you want to be the one they come talk to, tell them I want to be the one you come talk to. But if you say, hey, go talk to Charlie when we're on offense and talk to Danny when we're on defense, don't get mad when they don't come talk to you, because you have that ability to tell them right then and there. Remember the halftime weather change from last year, last 3 minutes of the first half of the second period, actually. You can mutually agree to shorten halftime if there is a weather delay that causes a 30-minute delay, which we all know if there is a weather delay, you're going to be waiting 30 minutes anyway. And then, of course, you would be able to then just kind of go out, take 3-minute warm-up, and go play. You don't get to pick up where you left off. If you're on the 5 going in to score, and you say, yeah, sure, let's kill it, we'll start off the second half, you're going to be starting off with a kickoff. So just keep that in mind. 40-second play clock. Remember, a defensive injury or an equipment issue, they have to come off the field. The play clock will be reset to 40 seconds. And then 25-second clarification, which is essentially what we were doing, is after a new series, after a legal kick, we would reset to 25. We were already doing that. They just made the rule cleared up. Disconcerting act, remember, was reclassified as a 5-yard penalty. It was 15. And that would be like your defensive lineman trying to bark out similar signals to your offense to get them to jump offside. Instead of being 15, that's now 5. And then, of course, you can spike the ball in the end zone to conserve time. And shotgun to conserve time. Remember, that must be the immediate action of the quarterback. You can't take it, look, and then do it. That would become a fumble at that point in time, or not a fumble. It could also be considered an illegal forward pass at that time. Gray is no longer allowed as for the home football jersey unless it meets that 70% shade of gray or darker. This color gray you see here would be an illegal home jersey. Remember, you must be dark at home and you're white on the road. Letter D there is the appropriate color. Anything darker than that, anything lighter than that, and there's your shades. This has been told to you as long as I've been here, so it shouldn't be a problem. And, of course, remember your jerseys. Beginning in 2024, the numbers must clearly contrast with the body of the jersey. Those jerseys there would be legal. These jerseys would be legal in terms of the numbers, clearly contrast. These would be illegal jerseys beginning in 2024. A lot of this has to do with making sure officials can see players' numbers, not necessarily to know who to call a penalty against, but to know who is eligible and who is not in terms of formations. It also helps with our Coach Association rep on the Rules Committee thought it was a big thing, too, for coaches in looking at film and identifying players. So make sure you get your jersey orders in the right way. Points of emphasis, sportsmanship. We've probably shared enough of that with you earlier. Intentional grounding. If you do nothing else, please share with your mamas and your daddies that we don't have a tackle box in high school football, so they can help spread that word in the stands. A lot of folks seem to think that he was outside the tackle box, you can't penalize him. That's not a rule in high school football. And if they throw a forward pass to prevent a loss of yardage or to conserve time to an area that's not occupied by an eligible receiver, it's an intentional grounding. Doesn't say it has to be catchable. It just said it has to be to an area occupied by an eligible receiver. If you see play pick A there, if a quarterback throws the ball in the neighborhood of the 30-yard line, 10 yards over everybody's head, you don't have intentional grounding, we'll be good, everybody moves on. But if it's not into an area where there's an eligible receiver, you've got intentional grounding, again, regardless of where he is inside the tackle box. Ineligibles downfield, remember that any pass play that crosses the pass that crosses the neutral zone in flight, your players must remain in the expanded neutral zone or behind it up until the time that ball leaves the quarterback's hand. So once it leaves the quarterback's hand, if it passes the line of scrimmage, once it's out of his hand, they then can go down the field. They have to be in that expanded neutral zone, which is considered 2 yards from the line of scrimmage. Remember the line of scrimmage formation, that head of play 88 there down at the bottom under letter B. He is not on the line of scrimmage. In some people's minds, he is not off the line of scrimmage. He's kind of in no man's land. I either say you're either on or you're off. To me, there is a no man's land. If you're not on, you got to be off, just like a light switch. If you're not on, you got to be off. 88's head should be in line with the center's front waist. It is not. We have coaches that have thought in the past that as long as 88's head's in line with 62's waist and 62's in line with 59's waist and 59's in line with the center, we're all good. And we essentially get that flying V formation going backwards. That's an illegal formation. You don't have enough players in the line of scrimmage. Any questions from me? I'm going to stop sharing for a second here and check the chat. I got a few. Coach asked, would it be necessary to prompt the officials that will cut block on the initial movement prior to the game? I'd be honest with you, I would not. I would not, because you're probably going to get flagged for an awful lot. You know, along those lines, be mindful. Please don't send officials clips from your next game's opponent of things they're doing wrong, because what you see may be incorrect from your angle, and it may be incorrect by rule. The best way to handle that, and don't send it to me and say, hey, will you make them aware this team holds all the time? No. What you need to do is you need to creatively in pregame meetings ask them questions. Hey, can you clarify this rule for me? You know, I got a question about the block below the waist rule. Can you clarify this for me? Okay, good. I just didn't know if we were teaching it right or not. I've seen it a lot on film the last few weeks. I just didn't know if we were doing it right. That way, when they see it, hopefully it'll prompt them to say, hey, that is a violation. Let me flag it. If they don't flag it, then you can say, hey, y'all just explained this to me and now you're not calling it. What's up? But be mindful, when you draw their attention to it, 8 out of 10 times they're going to flag you first for it. So if you know you're doing it as well, you better be mindful that when you draw their attention to it, they're going to draw attention to it. Coach asked, can we use sleds on the first 2 days? Yes. The book says what you cannot use. You cannot use air or foam filled dummies. Sleds are permissible on the first 2 days of practice, as long as they have that steel arm that connects them to the ground. And like I told somebody yesterday, don't have 5 kids hold a foam filled dummy and tie a string to it and call it a sled. Where are we at in regard to targeting? Same place we've been. We are, you know, if it's considered excessive and it's considered flagrant, then the player is ejected. Targeting can happen without it being considered flagrant by the official. That falls into their judgment, and we do address that. If it is ejection, we do address that with a next game suspension as well. We don't get into a next half or anything like the NCAA does. Any questions about eligibility like North Carolina did? No, our state legislature has the baseline set for eligibility. Our eligibility is set in terms of grades. You know, we are where we are. Eligibility is what it's been. We haven't made any adjustments to eligibility for any student athletes. And truthfully, I haven't heard of a ton of cases where we've had issues with students who would normally be eligible and not be eligible for any normal reasons. Okay, with that, I've got to kind of end this because we got the next group coming in. If you got any questions, please get back to me or send me an email. I appreciate your time. Best of luck. Get out there early tomorrow because the heat's going to be hot. Thank you all very much.